I'm JayP Fullam, and I'm a cadet at your academy. So I grew up in Rising Fawn, Georgia. It's a place no one from Georgia even knows exists. Wayne Fullam was his name. He was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. Flew F-105s most of his career. Fortunately, I never got to know him. He was shot down during Vietnam and was killed. It's my grandfather on the same side of my family, so my dad's side. He was actually best friends with my biological grandfather. He was also a 105 pilot during Vietnam. Most of his career spent in 105s. And he was shot down, was a prisoner of war for 5 years. 3 of those years were solitary confinement. So when he returned at the end of Vietnam, when all the prisoners were released, he continued to go by and check on my grandmother and my dad and all my uncles because it was his best friend's family. And eventually, more or less, my dad and all my uncles convinced them to just get married. So they did. So that's the grandfather I grew up with my whole life on my dad's side of my family. But he used to talk about just how great his life was. I mean, he was in the age of fighter pilots were the coolest guys in the world. I wanted to fly planes like my grandfather. And so I used to sit around and just listen to all his stories, and we would just quiz him on this and that, and he would take us to museum after museum or air show after air show. As I got older, and I truly did start to look into more college aspect, but even before that, I just knew. I knew that, hey, the Air Force Academy is where I want to go. They were one of the very first schools to actually come talk to me about playing football. Them and the Naval Academy were actually the 2 very first ones. And I took a hard look at it because, like I said earlier, this is where I wanted to be. And so it was on the table. I'm a southern boy from Georgia, and quite frankly, when you're 18 years old, SEC football talks. Especially when you get an offer from somewhere like Vanderbilt. That's a top-notch education and SEC football. They also, Coach Johnson, who was the head coach at that time, was one of the very few coaches that I talked to as far as a civilian university that was willing to let me do ROTC. I did Naval ROTC at Vanderbilt while I was there, and it was 2 hours from home instead of across the country. It was SEC football, which I had grown up loving. At the beginning of the season, I was the starting free safety at Vanderbilt, and I don't even know how to put it in words, but I still get chill bumps when I think about it. I couldn't help but have the what ifs. I would still go home, turn on ESPN, I'd see the highlights of the Air Force football game, and it was just, wow, that could have been me. I didn't have any aspirations of playing in the NFL or anything like that, like so many other guys do, especially in that conference. And to me, I was planning on graduating from Vanderbilt and either joining the Navy with ROTC or just going to a recruiter and signing up and joining the Air Force. But I made some phone calls, talked to some people, and in the end, they said, hey, it's an option. In all honesty, I think my prior college experience helped me out a lot because during that time, so many of my classmates were saying, oh, I should have gone to regular college. I should have done this. Why am I doing this to myself? And for me, it was, I've been there and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I was looking for. Like, this is what I'm looking for. For me, the transition was a lot easier than somebody that just went to college and really did just have all this freedom in the world. Quite frankly, my life was structured almost as much as it was here because of football. It was a lot different. All of a sudden, I can't wear my backpack anymore, and I have to run everywhere and things like that. But I think it was easier for me to buy into and things. One, because I had that big end goal in mind the whole time of, this is why I came here, this is what I want. You go through the tough times here in that structure, but the end goal is bigger than ever playing football. It's to join the Air Force. So it was the calculus 2, taking a quiz, using an unauthorized resource on a quiz. I got caught up in all of that. I admitted to it, did my 6 months of probation. It was one of the most terrifying experiences of my life, was thinking at this time my grandfather was still alive. And all I could think about was, how am I going to explain this to him? Here's a guy that's whole life has been the Air Force and the core values and prisoner of war, returned with honor. And here I am, his grandson, and I'm about to have to tell him, hey, Poppy, I've got an honor code violation. In all honesty, I tell people all the time, I think it's one of the best experiences I've ever had since I've been here, as far as what I've gotten out of it. Without that, my honor hit that I had, I would have never ended up where I am today. I mean, I'm the wing honor chairman now, and I would have never even thought about applying for that job had I not experienced the system. I applied to be the Squadron Honor NCO for my junior year. I got that job, and once I got that, the email came out about group and wing level honor jobs. And I said, you know, I might as well just go for that. because after my experience on probation, I knew I wanted to be a part of that at the bigger level. They asked me what job I wanted, and I looked at the wing honor chairman at that time, and I said, in all honesty, I want yours. So my 2-degree year, I was the wing honor NCO for the whole year, and then took over this year as the wing honor chairman. The reality of it is that the class of '59 created the code, adopted the code, and ever since then it's truly been the Cadet Wings code. We own it. Permanent Party gets some insight, but the reality is it's ours. It's a direct reflection of the Air Force core values. Integrity first, there's a reason it's first. And one way to get there and to instill that in everyone is to have this honor code that the whole wing is going to buy into and hold each other accountable. That's the whole reason there's a toleration clause in it, is because you're expected to hold each other accountable, because the civilian world out there holds us to a higher standard. You have a lot of kids here that come in out of a high school or something that, hey, back in high school, I just looked off my neighbor's stuff and it was no big deal. My teachers didn't care. Who cares? Well, all of a sudden you throw the honor code at them and it's we care. This cadet wing cares, your upperclassmen care, your classmates care. So it's a very serious thing, and violations of it are dealt very seriously. Now, most of the cadet wing never has a run-in with it. Most of the cadet wing's doing great things, but being a leadership laboratory, for us to develop you, you have to have a system that's willing to develop, and not a system that's just cut and dry. Hey, you screwed up, so go pack your bags. The whole purpose of the academy is to develop leaders of character. And one way we're going to do that is through the institution of our code and the honor education process. And that's part of why we added the rehabilitation piece, because if your kid goes and does something dumb, all of a sudden you don't just say, well, you're not my kid anymore. You help them out. You might ground them, and that's fine. That directly resembles our rehabilitation process. You lose some sanctions. You can't sign out. You lose your civilian clothes. But at the same time, we're going to mentor you, and we're going to give you all these things out here to help you get through this and to learn from it so you don't do it again, and you can help everyone else in the wing after that too. I would probably say, remember why you came here, and then remember why you stay here. Every day I sit in my room, I may not wear my grandfather's POW bracelets, I wear one of each of my granddad's dog tags. I have constant reminders all the time of this is who I am and this is where I came from, and they're who I want to be. The class of '64 who was just here recently with their reunion, and I want what we're producing to be something that they're proud of, more than anything. So when I say I'm going to help kids, it doesn't mean I'm going to bend over backwards and do everything in the world if you've done something extremely wrong to say, no, this kid needs to stay. I'm going to hold you accountable because I want those guys to be proud of what we're producing now. And I think I buy into that a lot because of my granddads. When I look at them, I see my grandfathers. And the last thing I would want is for us to be producing officers in the Air Force that my grandfather wouldn't want to serve with. I'm JayP Fullam, and I'm a cadet at your academy.